And now a special look at the civil rights movement from Fox News contributor Juan Williams and his two sons. Just days after a memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was officially dedicated here in Washington, the Williams family retraces King's steps to the day he led the March on Washington.
I'm gonna do the scrapple with 2 egg scramble, please.
You have jelly and stuff, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So the reason I came over to the Florida Avenue Grill today is that I wanted to start this trip down to the King Memorial, where Dr. King started the day that he gave the I Have a Dream speech in '63. And he's not a serious guy. The fact is, everybody says this is a guy who's a lot of fun, who comes in, he's telling jokes, he's laughing, and he's having breakfast.
This was a crazy scene, though, that morning, I would imagine.
I mean, you think about that, just even like coming in and you know, he's about to give that speech, and you know, what's going through his mind as he's preparing, but then also trying to drive people down there, trying to let people know like this is something that we're all doing.
The funny part about it is, because he came to Washington so frequently, people knew him in here. It's not like he comes in like a movie star.
Right.
He comes in like a regular at the Florida Avenue Grill. But he's got to be thinking about the speech. You know, he's got to be saying hello to people. But at the same time, his brain knows something big is going on.
Do you think he realized how big the moment was going to be beforehand?
Oh, they worked hard to make it happen. Remember, the government didn't want the March on Washington.
They were afraid of it.
They were afraid there's going to be a riot. And you know what else about that march is cool? Or strange, the competition among the people who were speaking. They didn't want to give King a prime spot speaking, so they made him speak last, thinking that the TV networks would all be gone.
Oh, I see.
But of course, he speaks last, and people wait. Everybody's waiting to hear from Dr. King. What's hard for me to get across to the two of you is what a different world you live in than the one I grew up in. I grew up in a world that was being changed by Dr. King. But for you, you grew up in a world that's already been changed.
Well, it's just something that's so far removed from me to imagine that, you know, this country that I grew up in,
Right.
the place that I know is so segregated. It's something I read about in a book, but I've never experienced it, I've never really seen it.
So imagine Dr. King here in the morning. He's got a copy of the Washington Post. There's nobody black writing for the Washington Post. In my life, I become the White House correspondent for the Washington Post. That's a leap.
Right.
You see me on TV, it's not like, oh my gosh, there's a black guy on TV. It's like, there's my dad.
Right.
For him, it would have been, there are no black people if I turn on the TV, and certainly not talking politics.
Yeah. I don't get told no because I'm black.
Well, I hope not, but I think you should, that's the thing. Do you realize, I mean, through me as your father's eyes, that people still see you as a black kid if you're walking down the street?
Yeah.
When you have to overcome things, when you have to overcome in order to achieve, does it make you stronger? I think for my generation, it's like, you know, where my mom, I think every black mom used to say, you have to be twice as good in order to get half as far. Reverend Fauntleroy.
So good to see you.
So these are my sons. I want to introduce them to you. This is Antonio, and this is Raph. He just graduated from college.
Is that right?
Pleasure to meet you.
But we're going down to the King Memorial, and I just thought, you know, I know somebody who knew Dr. King.
Yes.
If I could introduce them to the man who knew the man. But what was it like that day? Because you were actually involved in helping him get set on the speech.
Well, we had worked on the speech for a week in New York and then here, because he was to be limited to 10 minutes. And we were having a time trying to capsule all that he meant to the world at that moment from Birmingham in 10 minutes. We said, Martin, at least I said to him, Martin, you got to do what the Spirit says do.
Right.
And when Mahalia Jackson got through singing How I Got Over,
Baby, I know that must have been something.
he went 18 minutes with the greatest speech of our time.
You heard it right there. You're on the stage?
I was on the stage but exhausted because the night before, after we paid $66,000 for a loudspeaker system to take us all the way across the mall, somebody had savaged it.
Cut the wire.
Cut the wires, such that only the U.S. Signal Corps could put it back together.
And they did.
And they did after I asked Bobby Kennedy.
Hell.
He said, Walter, look, they're already saying that we're putting on the march. I said, but if we don't have that thing going at noon, we'll have 200,000 people here who can't hear.
That's gonna be trouble.
And it's gonna be trouble. So I waited all night long and watched, because I couldn't do anything, but I watched them work. And at 12 noon, I heard somebody say, testing, 1, 2.
That was good. Yeah.
What was it like as you watching these 200,000 people come onto the mall, and then you know you're up there on the stage, you're right there behind Dr. King. What was that experience?
Well, it was like the children of Israel coming across the Red Sea. And when I saw America, black and white and red and brown and yellow together, marching together, it was worth all the pain and all of the anxiety that I had endured.
What do you see from your angle? You're 88, you're 78.
78, yeah.
78. By the way, you're looking great, man.
Well, that's because I keep myself physically fit, mentally awake, and morally straight.
But I'm saying, this guy's an executive for a big company. This guy just got out of a fancy college. What do you think when you look at these guys?
Well, I shout for joy.
All right.
I shout for joy because I remember the dream that we had. That he put it best when he said, one of these days, my little 4 children will not be humiliated. That day has arrived.
You know, you've been so nice because I wanted to introduce him to somebody who knew Dr. King, who loved Dr. King. And I know he loved you, and I just thought for them as young men, to touch you is to touch part of King. So now we're going to go down and take a look at the memorial. It'll be the first time the boys have seen it. And, you know, it's an emotional moment.
It is.
But to have you take a moment, say hello to my sons, I appreciate it, man. I just want to say thanks.
Well, I want to thank you for you. I want to thank you for the future. We shall overcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, here we are. We made it. This is the King Memorial, and the idea is that this was a mountain of despair going back to that time that I was telling you about, 1950s, 1960s, legal segregation that was born out of slavery in this country, and the mountain of despair. And then we start to move. And as King spoke about, out of that mountain of despair comes a civil rights movement that produces this stone of hope. And he is coming out of that as literally the personification of movement, of people, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And for us as people, as black people, he moved our lives. I just wouldn't be me without him. And you couldn't be my sons, you couldn't be you.
Well, for me, it's always been that Martin Luther King is the symbol of the civil rights movement, and he is the one factor of it. And when it's being taught in school, you think Martin Luther King is the civil rights movement, but it's only until recently, where I've done my own personal studies, that I realized that he is an intricate piece of it, but there's so much more around him, you know.
But I think that for you guys, you never had to live in segregation. I think you're free in a way that you can't believe if you were back at the start of the 20th century.
Well,
this moment's like...
It's a different country today than it was back then, and it's really because of the civil rights movement, because of things that King has done. And we recognize that, but I don't think we fully understand it. I don't think it's possible to fully understand it.
You know, he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He's bigger even than the powerful experience we as black Americans have had with him. He's a gift, a blessing to the world.
You know, I did a Google search on Dr. King before I came down here, and the interesting thing on the Wikipedia is he's the second most recognizable American behind Lincoln.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. You know what's funny to me is that sometimes I run into young people, especially young black people, and they think King was sort of a milquetoast leader. He's acceptable to whites. Everybody praises him. And they don't realize what a change agent, how radical, how he was appealing to conscience of, you know, all people. In the name of God, we're going to be equal. We're going to have opportunity. But to stand up for it and give his life for it, shed his blood, it touches my heart, man. So guys, I appreciate you getting down here, coming with the old man, making a trek.
Well, thanks for bringing us, Dad.
No, you know that. I love you. Thanks.
Our thanks to the Williams family. This piece was put together in conjunction with the Roger Ailes Apprentice Program.